Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all.
Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books, and today I'm going to be talking about my January wrap-up and my February TBR. January was actually a fantastic reading month and a really great way to start off this year. Out of the 6 books I read, I pretty much liked all of them except for one, and I think I'm doing a good job sticking to my goals so far. So only read 6 books. I didn't overwhelm myself. I picked a few books that have been on my TBR for a while, and I read a book by a new author. So as I usually do, I will rank these in order of my favorites, and then in the second half of the video, we'll talk about my February TBR. So I'm going to jump in with number 6. And that's going to be Midnight Strikes by Zeba Shahaz. This is an Owl Crate book box book. It's got a really cool cover, and the story has a really cool premise. It's basically a magical time loop. This girl goes to a ball at a palace, and while she's there, the palace falls under attack by these rebels, this rebellion. They kill everyone, including her, but immediately after she dies, she wakes up the next day, just hours before going to this ball, and this repeats over and over and over again. So as the story goes along, she tries to figure out how to break out of this time loop, how to maybe stop this rebellion, not only save herself, but everyone else that died, save the kingdom. Like, saying it out loud, I feel like that's a really cool setup, right? Unfortunately, it's not well executed. It's not well executed. First of all, this story does have the insta-love YA trope. So girl meets boy, they're kind of instantly connected. She sees him die over and over again. But of course they fall in love because, you know, insta-love. Number 2, there are some moments where our main character straight up murders and kills people. And sure, you could say she's justified in some of those actions, but she never feels bad about it. She never questions the decision. She never has like a moment where she's like, oh my God, I just took someone's life. She's more like bent on revenge, and I don't think that's really great. So things like that, like all these little things. And unfortunately, I also think that the main character is just kind of a generic YA female. So I talked about this way longer than I wanted to. Not my favorite book of January, but it did have potential. I guess I'll say that. My 5th favorite book of the month, a book I did enjoy, and that is Tidelands by Philippa Gregory. Philippa Gregory is one of my all-time favorite authors, and she writes a ton of historical fiction. But usually she writes about like royal families, so the court of Henry VIII and all of his wives. She's written about Mary, Queen of Scots. She's written about, you know, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria. This book focuses on the life of a regular, ordinary, poor woman living in this remote town. So on one hand, it's like super interesting what a day, or this, you know, covers a span of time, but what a month in this woman's life looks like. However, it's quite slow. Like, it really is just an exploration of her life. Like, it's not really more exciting about that. There's only a bit of drama at the very, very, very end of the book. I'm talking like final 10 pages type stuff. And I feel like at that point, we're supposed to feel bad for the main character, because obviously in this time period, women didn't have a lot of rights, right? They couldn't have their own money. They didn't own land. They were completely dependent upon their husbands to take care of him. So I understand that. However, I feel like the main character also makes some bad decisions that kind of, like, there's no other way they could have turned out other than the way that they turn out. So I don't really feel that bad for her. Like, a little bit, but I don't think I feel as bad for her as much as maybe the author wanted me to. Now, I understand that this is a series and the characters in this story, their story continues, and I do want to read the rest of the series at some point because I am interested in seeing what happens next. Number 3 and number 4 on my list, I had a really hard time choosing between, going back and forth, because they are completely different books, completely different genres, and it's like comparing apples and oranges. So I just had to go with my gut. So I'm going to say that my 4th favorite book of the year so far is Everything's Eventual by Stephen King. I've read a ton of Stephen King short story collections, and I have to say, I think that this is my favorite one since Night Shift. I really enjoyed the majority of the stories in here. I think that it helped a lot that some of the stories in here, multiple, are based on King's other works. So for example, there is a short story in here about Roland, who's the main character in his Dark Tower series. There is a story in here that's based off of Rose Matter, and I think there's one more, but I can't think of it. So being a fan of Stephen King, like I am, I really enjoyed that. So this is one of the better short story collections from him that I've read in quite a while. So if you are a short story person, you're looking for something to read, I think Everything's Eventual is actually really enjoyable. But the book that I gave a slight edge that ended up in the number 3 spot is Dealing with Dragons by Patricia Wrede. Weird word. I don't know how you pronounce it. Maybe C-Jar, you can tell me. Once again, thank you for sending me this book, C-Jar. I really enjoyed it. It's about a spunky little princess who basically doesn't want to be a princess. She doesn't fit in with all of the princess things. She doesn't want to learn how to sew and dance. She wants to learn how to sword fight and be adventurous. So when this dragon comes to kidnap her, she's basically like, you don't have to kidnap me. I will go with you. So she goes off with this dragon, and then she kind of gets pulled into the dragon's world, and there's wizards, and there's witches, and there's a dragon king, and there's spells. This book is quite short, but it has a lot going for it. All those things that I just mentioned. And then mixed in with that, there's really great messages in here. There's messages about, being true to yourself and doing the right thing and standing up, and there's so much good stuff in here. So yeah, I gave it the edge over Everything's Eventual because this is a new author to me and a new series to me. So that newness, I think, kind of gave it a little bit of an edge over Everything's Eventual, but I really liked both of these books. All right, top 2 are another pair that I kept going back and forth, which one should I put over the other? And ultimately, my second favorite read of the year so far is Starling House by Alix E. Harrow. This is my first book that I've read by Alix E. Harrow, and it's definitely not going to be my last because I absolutely loved this book. I mean, first of all, it's a gorgeous copy here. Yes, it did come from Owl Crate, and I'll just open it really quick so you can see the inside cover and the reverse dust jacket here. So pretty, but it's basically it's kind of a haunted house story, but it's more than that. So there's this young girl, Opal. She's been having these dreams about a house that she is in her town, but she's never seen it because this house, it sits back from the road behind a gate. No one ever comes in, no one ever goes out. But one day she happens to be walking by the house and she stops the driveway, and there's a young guy there, Arthur, and he offers her a job as a housekeeper. Now, Opal's life is very sad. She's had a very hard life. Her mother died, and she's trying to take care of her younger brother, Jasper. They have no money. She's working to death. They have to sleep in this old motel, and she's basically has this mindset of I'm the only one that's going to take care of us. I have to scrimp and scrape and lie and steal and thief and do whatever it takes to make sure that my brother is okay and that we survive. So she starts working in this house that is magical. It's haunted. Like, there is something going on there. Now, layered on top of that, there is this like powerful family that kind of owns the town, and they own this power plant. And this powerful family wants the land that Starling House sits on. Yeah, Starling House is the magic haunted house. So once this family finds out that Opal is working in the house, they send this corporate fixer, basically, to try and persuade her to help them. And man, this woman is, I mean, she is one of the best villains I have seen in a fantasy in quite a while. Like, she is beyond evil. Like, she is so deliciously evil that, like, when you meet her, you instantly hate her because she's just so corporate. But then as she starts to mess with Opal, mess with her family, with her brother, with their home, like, oh man, this human character is way more villainous than any magical character I have ever seen. And I loved it. I'm here for it. So I definitely want to check out more books by Alix E. Harrow. So what could be better than that? Well, I present to you the first book that has made me cry in 2024, Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is the sequel to Six of Crows. And when I started this book, I honestly was a little worried. I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be as good as the first one. Like, the first one was just so good. I don't know if this one could measure up. And I kind of forgot some of the things that happened in the first one. But by the end, like, wow. This book took me on an emotional roller coaster. I got really, really upset and angry towards the end of the book for a couple things that happened. I'm like, why'd you have to do that? That's so upsetting. And then at the very end of the book, I cried tears of joy because I was just so happy. If you don't know anything about this duology, basically we have a gang of characters that live in this city, Ketterdam. It's kind of this island city that's full of like criminals and thieves, and our band of characters, they all come from different places, but in the first book, they work together to pull off this big heist. And now in this book, they are kind of dealing with the repercussions of this heist, and all the other like mob bosses are coming after them. So it's not just one heist in this book, it's multiple ones that they have to pull off. And yeah, the way that it's done, I think, is just so brilliant. It's so much fun. And the thing I love most about this book is the characters, and they definitely did not disappoint me. So yeah, I'm saying it. Crooked Kingdom is my favorite book of the year so far. So now I'm going to jump in and quickly go through my February TBR. Again, just doing 6 books. This one's kind of a mix of newer books and older books. But first and foremost is my first reader recommendation of the year, and that's going to be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. This book has been recommended to me by so many people, but most recently, when I asked on my community post, Nicole over at Nicole's Bookish Nook, I know you recommended this to me, so thank you so much. I did pick up a copy the other week. I'm only a couple chapters in so far, but I am already calling it. Like, I really think I'm gonna love this one. Next up, as always, I'm continuing my Stephen King adventure with Wolves of the Calla. Finally returning to the Dark Tower series. This is book number 5. And I believe after this one, he did publish the rest of the series in sequential order. So I think the next, 3-ish Stephen King books I have will be the rest of the Dark Tower series. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into this world and finally finishing the series because I never finished it the first time through. So really looking forward to that. Next up, I have my adult fantasy of the month, and yes, I am on the bandwagon, and I am reading House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 3rd book in her Crescent City series, and I bought this one as soon as it came out last week, so I've been reading it for, 3 days now, and honestly, when I first started it, I went, uh-oh, because It's been so long since I read the last one, and there are so many characters. I'm like, I don't remember what happened to some of these characters. So that's okay. I think I'll be okay. I'm just going to plow through and see what happens because I do not have the time to go back and read those other books. So, yes. Even though I've had my issues with this series, I feel like I'm in too deep to stop, and these books are just too pretty. So here's hoping that maybe House and Flame of Shadow may be my favorite one yet. Next up, I have my rando pick of the month. Since it is February, I was like, oh, maybe I'll do a romance. But if you know me at all, I don't really have any romances. So my pick is Court. This is the 4th book in the Crave series, which is basically kind of an updated version of Twilight. So it's very much a, girl meets vampire type story, type romance. These books are super corny. They're super ridiculous. They're over the top. But I think that they are super fun. The 3rd one wasn't my favorite of the series, so hopefully this one gets things back on track. Next up, I have my YA fantasy of the month, and I couldn't let February go by without reading about one of my favorite bookish couples of all time, Alec Lightwood and Magnus Bane from the Shadowhunter universe. So this is the Lost Book of the White. This is the 2nd book in the Red Scrolls series. I read the first one, The Red Scrolls of Magic, last year. I've been waiting for a good time to read the sequel, and I thought, hey, this is a good time. So, yes, if you're not a fan of Alec and Magnus, aka Malik, what are you doing? The first book was really cute. It explored the early days of their relationship. This book, I understand, explains a little bit later when they're kind of an established couple. So really looking forward to see how that's handled here. And finally, that brings me to my book box book pick. This is a book that I've had for a while. It's one of the, not the first, but it's one of the first few books I ever got from Owl Crate. And that is Witches Steeped in Gold by CNN Smart. I started this book on Thursday, and this is another book that after the first 2 chapters, I went, uh-oh, I'm not sure about this one. So I'm going to stop here and pause for a minute because that is the end of my TBR. That's everything. So if you want to turn off the video now, you are good to go. But if you want to stay here, I want to take you on a little rabbit hole I went down the other night about this book. And because I don't have a lot of bookish people to talk to about this, I'm going to talk to you, and I would love to know if other people go down rabbit holes with this type of stuff. So I'll just give it a minute. Okay, here's the rabbit hole I went down with Witches Steeped in Gold. So this is the type of fantasy that drops you in the middle of a foreign world and just relies on you, the reader, to kind of be able to pick it up as you go. And as someone who reads a ton of fantasy, I'm used to that. I'm okay with that. I've read those type of books before. But it is one level of, you have stuff that you have to get used to. It does take time to get used to it, that type of stuff. Now, layer on top of that, this book is written by the author. While she was born in England, her family is from Jamaica. So layer on top of this, there are a lot of Jamaican phrases in this book. Jamaican terms, Jamaican phrases. So not only do you not have any idea where you are or what's happening, you don't know the terms that are being used. You don't know, it's just a lot that makes absolutely no sense. So after the first 2 chapters, I was like, wow, this is one of the most difficult YA fantasies I've picked up in a while. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm, again, too old for this type of book. Maybe, again, I haven't been educated enough about this type of vernacular. Maybe it's just me. So this led me to do an online search for reviews. I'm like, let me see what other people have said about this one. And if other people have given it high praise, then, I'll just plow through. What I found, though, is that this book actually has a pretty low, I'm using that term in quotation marks, star rating on Goodreads. I think it's at a 3.2, which if you know Goodreads at all, that's quite low because people are pretty generous on Goodreads. I even saw a review for this book that they said I didn't like it and still gave it a 3 stars. So the fact that it's at a 3.2 is pretty low. And most of the star ratings are between 4 and 3, which again is uncommon for this type of book. And all those reviews pretty much said the same thing. Like, it's too slow, it's too hard to understand, the language is confusing, blah, 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 blah. So then I'm like, okay, like, how did this happen? How did this book that was put out by HarperCollins, which is one of the biggest publishing houses in the world, it was sent out in an Owl Crate book box to tons of, customers, influencers, whatever. Like, how did this book get made? How did it get to the point where this big push happened, but like no one can read it or no one is having a good time reading it? And again, obviously, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But I have a theory, and I have a theory because I went to the back of the book. So I'm like, I want to know a little bit more about this author. She put in, there are 6 pages of acknowledgments in the back of this book. 6 pages. And I read them all. Why? Because I was trying to figure out, like, where did this book go wrong? Like, what the heck? So I read all 6 pages, and I could really feel in those pages, I could feel her passion for writing, and I can see her talent there. So she has the passion, she has the talent, so I can only assume that the people around her did not do a good enough job guiding her as to what type of book this should be. And let me explain that further. When it comes to entertainment, books, movies, magazines, even video games probably, there's generally like 2 directions that you could go. Again, overgeneralization here, general. On one hand, you have the commercial. So this is, hey, your books, you're going to have multiple hard copies of your book in every Barnes & Noble all around the world, major bookstores, tons of campaigns, tons of media, and if you're successful, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to appeal to the widest group of people possible. On the other side of that, you have the more artistic path you can go. And if you go this path, you're going to be put out by probably a smaller publishing house. There's only going to be maybe 1 copy of your book. You may not even get a hardcover. Maybe it's only soft covers. But these are the type of books that win awards. These are the type of books that are lauded in literary societies of being like works of art. So commercial, lots of money, or artistic, work of art. And yes, it is possible to do both at the same time, but that is very rare. That is the exception, not the rule. So I feel like this book is trying to do both, which for a debut author is nearly impossible. I don't know why someone around her did not stop her or steer her wrong. I think this book actually could have done quite well in the artistic literary space. Obviously, it would have had to have been edited down and changed a lot. But I think this book is also trying to be commercial, but there's too much going on here for it to be commercial. So that's where I landed. And yeah, so clearly I went down quite a rabbit hole here, looking up reviews, reading acknowledgments, developing theories. Like literally the other night, I was like pacing around my living room, talking out loud about my thoughts about this book. So please let me know if anyone else has done that type of thing before. But I've been rambling enough. I'm really not sure what I'm going to do here because I don't DNF. It's been a while since I've DNF'd. The fact that I'm even like slightly considering it is a pretty big deal. I'm going to give it through the weekend and a little bit more, and I don't know, we'll see how it goes. If I do decide to DNF, you will be the first to know because it'll be a big deal for me. But I am going to try not to. But if anyone else has read this one, let me know if you think I should stick with it. If you made it all the way to the end of my rambling, Of course, I had to reward you with a little sleepy swiper. Yeah, Swiper is a sleepy baby today. So I'm gonna go put her to bed, have some cuddles. So I hope you all have a great day, afternoon, evening. But before you go, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel and let me know what you're gonna be reading in February. As always, happy reading.